I'd love to, man, move forward and talk about those three words on your hat. Can you take us back to the day they were said and what, obviously you went through everything and then transitioned to the ESPN and then another setback during that period as well.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, the day that the words really resonated with me, I was 12 years old. I had just had my dad make me a wall of cork. And I wanted a wall of cork to put goals up. I remember a teacher one day in class said, everybody needs to have goals and dreams, and you need to write them down and pin them up in your room because it's where you start and end your day. You need to see them in the morning when you get up, and you need to revisit them at night. And I remember thinking, that's the greatest idea I ever heard. So I had my dad make me a wall of cork, makes me a wall of cork, and I pinned the goal up I will play in the National Football League because that was my goal. I was 12 years old, put Walter Payton up, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I had this first moment of truth in life. When I was asked as a kid, what are you going to do when you grow up? I'd say, I'm going to play in the NFL. As soon as I said that, one of four things was said to me. Oh, my gosh, you know how hard that is? Do you know the odds you playing in the NFL are? Oh, son, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. We wouldn't want you to be disappointed, or it's impossible. And I was revisiting those things. I was looking at, I would play in the National Football League. And the more I let those things weigh on me, like the heavier they became. And for a moment, like I'll play in the National Football League was nothing more than words on a wall. And here's where I had my first moment of truth in life, a moment of like self-reflection. I remember thinking, I get angry. I was like, I didn't write that to be words on a wall. I wrote it down because I wanted to achieve it. And on that day, I committed to that goal. Whatever work was required, I was going to do it. Whatever odds I was up against, even though I didn't know it, I was going to put them on I was going to attempt to beat them. But don't put your eggs in one basket. Still, even when I was a kid, I was like, that's dumb. That's just dumb. And what I thought of at that point, I don't want to wake up 20 years later and regret I didn't try. I don't want to be disappointed in myself. And that was probably the tipping point where like a fire lit in me, my energy changed. And then I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I remember the words find a way pop into my head, and they just ignite a journey. They sparked so many things, but the one thing it sparked still to this day, because I have it sitting right there, take action. Like do something about your circumstance. That's what helped me get off the couch. Even though I was there for months, it was like you find a way and you make things happen. Do I know how I'm going to do that at the time? No, I did not know how I was going to do that. And really what it taught me is that we are all responsible for our journeys. We are the CEO of ourselves and where we're going and how we're going to do things. And the quicker you can learn to take ownership of your journey, the quicker that you can focus and learn that you have to invest in you to get the best out of you, then you're going to be richly rewarded for doing that. And I'm not going to get an award like a trophy, not those type. You're going to be rewarded with things like peace, joy, happiness, and personal success and joy because you did your part. You got everything out of your God-given ability. You have no regrets. Fear is temporary, regret is forever. Man, you start living by what you trust, and the person you trust is the person in the mirror. That you don't want to let down. And that's kind of it in a nutshell at age 12, and they still sit on my wall today. And they spark me to do that one thing, take action. Circumstances come up all the time. People have them all the time, and they're good. I mean, there could be a goal driven, or it could be a darkness that comes your way. You didn't see it. I know what everybody's smart enough to know what the results will be if you do nothing. So let's do something.
Did they,
And,
and you were diagnosed with cancer, right, as well, non-Hodgkin's?
and that right there was the darkest because of the finality of it. And I was on the couch and my career was over. There was just a sorrow of darkness, of loss. And I'd lost my mom when I was a kid too. So, you know, loss is loss. And the sting of death is one thing, but the loss of like hope and purpose, I mean, that's empty. And even those were dark. When I was told I had a 3-pound tumor in my lower back, and he said it's the size and shape of a football, and I was going to go through brutal chemotherapy, it could take 2 years. And he said, and I can't even guarantee what we're going to do is going to work for you. Well, the reality of like, it's over. I mean, like, death being a part of that battle was overwhelming. It was as dark as I've ever been. Um, and it was really after I shared it with my kids that I was gonna be bald, and I was gonna be sick and tired because I wanted to get ahead of it because they're not used to me being sick and bald laying on a couch. And my daughter was 9 at the time, and she's the one that crawled up in my lap and finally got my attention. And I looked at her and she said, "Well, then you know what, Dad? You better find a way." Because I've used find a way as a parenting tool for them. Like they come in my office, I'm like, okay, well, Corey, let's find a way. What do you think you have to do? What should you do? What's your plan? I try to get them engaged in the process because when you take ownership of your journey, you create a plan. You have a better chance to stick to it than to hear somebody tell you, you need to do A, B, and C. But I'd help. Don't give me. But she was used to me saying that, and she challenged me on that day. It was very similar to age 12. Like I got a new sense of energy. I mean, I didn't. Dying wasn't an option. Being sick and tired, feeling sorry for myself, not an option. Going bald, that's still going to be an option. But man, the way I thought about it changed. My energy changed. And very similar to age 12, from how I went about accomplishing that goal, I overcame like the greatest challenge that I've ever had to deal with.
Do you think cancer was your biggest challenge?
Yes,
My
yes,
grandpa, I watched my grandpa die of bowel cancer, and he was one of the hardest people I'd ever met in my life. Like this giant of a person, and watching him like go through that experience, I could see like that emotional experience was like a 5-year journey, and I could only imagine like the fear and how hard that would be for a man like yourself.
well, Kobe, you, because you can understand the compounds of fear. Okay, for your kids to see you erode like that, like you've never forgot that. And that erosion was all I could think of was chemotherapy and dying. I'm telling you, it's all just initially. That's the only thing I could think of, and just for the visual of that, um, just I almost and I lost my mom when I was a kid, so I understand the sting of death and how that losing a parent can wreck a home and change lives. There was a bunch of things weighing on me, with 2 kids that are different when you don't have kids. But the sting of death is the sting of death, and that being part of the equation, I, there's no way that one person, because I did it. I remember I just read a book about a guy who had fought cancer, beat it, and I remember I closed the book up. I'm like, man, I'm not big enough for that one. That ain't. But I'm
Right.
like, I'll never have to worry about that. With the way my family history is, we have no history in our cancer history. I'll never have the way my lifestyle. Never worry about. Because I was like, I just anointed my. I ain't big enough to handle that. I could never handle it, but I'll never have to worry about that. Then when you get presented that, I handled it just like I thought I would. I couldn't handle it. I was like, it wasn't until my daughter challenged me that changed how I approached that.
And I guess it wasn't just those 3 words, though. What was it about your daughter challenging you?
Well, I, in the way she did it. Because he crawled up my lap and she was like, got a little dainty arms around my neck. And then she just, finally I just stopped and looked at her and she says, well, then, you know what, Dad, you got to find a way. And so it wasn't, she challenged me. The other ones gave me hope. This time it challenged me. And man, it changed the way I thought. And she was right. Like the way I was thinking, I was going to help myself to the grave. I wasn't going to get myself out of there. And that day I never looked back.